Hey everyone, so you've heard the word startup thrown around a million times, right? But what's the real difference between a startup and just, a new business? It's a question that trips up so many people, but trust me, they are two completely different animals. Today, we're going to break down exactly what makes a startup a startup.
All right, let's just rip the Band-Aid off and get right to it. What is a startup really? And how in the world is it different from a regular traditional business? Getting this clear in your head is so important, especially if you're an entrepreneur. So let's make sure we nail it.
Okay, so on one hand, you've got your traditional businesses. You often hear these called lifestyle businesses, and that's because their main goal is awesome and straightforward, provide a great, sustainable living for the founder and their team. But startups? Oh man, they are playing a completely different game. Different rules, a different scoreboard, and a much riskier goal.
So let's dive into that. The fundamental difference, the thing that really separates these two paths, can be understood perfectly by looking at just one simple graph, a graph that shows money over time. First up, let's look at the financial journey of a regular business. You know the drill. You expect a little dip at the beginning, a small loss while you're getting set up. But the pressure is on to get profitable and fast. Otherwise, you're not going to make it. And if you succeed, you get that beautiful, steady, predictable growth. It's healthy, it's stable, and it's smart.
Now, take a look at the startup curve. It's wild. The plan, from day one, is to lose a massive amount of money. We're talking millions, sometimes for years, before there's even a whisper of profit. So why on earth would anyone sign up for that? Well, it's because of what comes after, the potential for that insane, explosive, hockey stick growth curve. The risk is just enormous, but the potential reward, it's astronomical. I want you to focus on that huge pit of loss right at the start of the startup journey. It is so significant and so dangerous that it has its own ominous name. This brings us to a startup's first great challenge, the Valley of Death.
And yeah, it's called the Valley of Death for a very good reason. This is that terrifying phase where millions of dollars in investment are just being burned through to build the product and find customers, all while the business has zero proof it can actually survive. This is where most startups die. It's a brutal place.
So if you're going to survive something called the Valley of Death, you need a very specific kind of DNA. And that brings us to the 4 core characteristics that really define what a true startup is and separates it from pretty much every other kind of business out there.
First, a startup raises money, and I mean a lot of money. Why? Because you're usually building something really complex, like software, that costs a fortune to develop before you can sell even one copy. Take the wine app, Vivino. It's free for millions of us to use, but building and running it costs an absolute fortune and takes hundreds of employees. That's what the funding is for.
Now, this massive spending isn't just reckless, it's a deliberate strategy called a land grab. The whole goal is to use that investment money to capture the entire market as fast as humanly possible, even if you lose tons of money doing it. Once you're the king of the hill, then you worry about making a profit. The textbook example of this? Facebook. They just focused on getting users for years before they ever turned into the profit machine we know today.
The second characteristic is that startups are almost always disruptors. They don't just join an industry, they flip the whole table over. And it usually happens in 3 classic steps. First, there's some kind of big shift, usually in technology. Second, the old established companies, well, they're too slow or too comfortable to adapt. And that's when step 3, the startup swoops in with a new product that solves the problem in a totally new and better way. Third, a startup has to grow incredibly fast. We're not talking 10% a year. In the early days, it's got to be several 100% per year. And this isn't just about bragging rights. For investors, crazy growth is the only sign they're going to get their money back. And for the founders, it's pure survival. Slow growth is a death sentence because it makes it almost impossible to raise that next crucial round of funding. And the fourth and final characteristic, and this one is absolutely critical, is that a startup has to be scalable. Let me break this down. Compare a consultant to an app developer. A consultant's pay is tied to their time, right? 1 hour of work gets them 1 hour of pay. That just doesn't scale. But an app developer, they can build an app one time and then sell that same app millions or even billions of times with almost no extra cost for each new customer.
And if you want to see what true mind-boggling scalability looks like, here it is. The game Subway Surfers was built once by a small team. It has since been downloaded over 2 billion times. They can sell it to a new person tomorrow with pretty much zero extra cost. That is the magic of scalability.
So when you put all these things together, raising tons of money, crazy growth, massive scalability, it leads us right to the people writing the checks. Let's talk about the investor side of this. It's a high-stakes game that explains exactly why venture capitalists, or VCs, absolutely need to see at least a 10 times return on their winning bets.
So check this out. Let's look at a typical VC's portfolio. Imagine they invest $1 million into 10 different startups. They go into this fully expecting that 5 of them, half, will fail completely and go to zero. They figure 3 will probably just give them their money back, break even. 1 might do okay, maybe double their money. The entire success of their whole fund is riding on that one last startup being a massive 10x plus home run.
So this is the most important question in the whole startup world. What happens to that investor's entire portfolio if you just take that one massive winner out of the equation?
The whole thing collapses. It's a total disaster. Instead of turning $10 million into a $15 million return, they've now put $9 million into the other companies and only gotten $5 million back. That's a horrible loss. That one single home run has to pay for all the other failures. And that is why the potential for explosive growth is completely non-negotiable for a startup. It's not greed, it's just math.
Okay, so we've looked at the crazy financial curves, the core DNA of a startup, and the logic of the investors. This all brings us to our final section, which is really all about you and your idea. It all comes down to choosing your path.
So here's a simple checklist. Ask yourself, does my idea fit this mold? Am I planning to raise a ton of money? Am I trying to disrupt an entire industry? Can this thing grow incredibly fast? And is it highly scalable? If the answer to most of these is no, then you're probably building a traditional business, which, by the way, is an amazing and often much more sustainable way to succeed. The most important thing, though, is to be brutally honest with yourself about which game you are playing, right from the very beginning. The biggest mistake you can make is chasing venture capital from investors who need that 10x home run when what you're really building is a wonderful, profitable, traditional business. Your goals and your funding have to be perfectly aligned. And that leaves us with the final and, I think, most important question of all. You have an idea, you have the ambition. Now that you've seen what makes these two paths so different, which one will you choose to take?